up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Zero Mile ADV, a true beginner's guide to adventure motorcycling from a true beginner's perspective. We are inside today because I have tried to film this video multiple times outside, and we're talking all about big bikes, and I was even on a big bike, a BMW R1250GS. I had to think about that long name. Let's cut a clip to one of the terrible clips that actually ended up going south because I had a bunch of technical problems, just so you can see. But for some reason, technology and my gear just did not want to cooperate with me while trying to record this video outside, and I live in the desert and it's going to be hot. So since we're talking all about big bikes today, we might as well do it with a nice cup of coffee in a controlled environment where hopefully I can get this video done because it's a video I've been wanting to talk about. So with that long intro, let's finally get into it. If you haven't seen, I did a video on the new Mexico BDR, kind of my summary video on the new Mexico BDR. And in it, I kind of hinted to the fact that that BDR might have possibly changed my mind on the whole big bike thing. And if you're not familiar, my very first motorcycle, I just started riding motorcycles about 3 years ago, did not grow up riding dirt bikes. I am new to this whole thing. And my very first motorcycle I purchased and owned was a KTM 1290 Super Adventure S. And ever since then, I've been a big proponent of big bikes. I think they're awesome. I think there's a lot of benefits, especially because the internet seems to be completely against big bikes for a lot of people. And so I kind of wanted to be the champion for big bikes and maybe why you should consider them. But have I changed my mind? Okay, so first let's talk about why I love big bikes. I think big bikes provide a lot of stability, both on-road and off-road, and that may seem counterintuitive. But like if you mountain bike, I've been mountain biking most of my life, and now with the advent of e-bikes, one thing that is hard to get used to with an e-bike is that it generally weighs twice as much as a mountain bike. You will find that the heavier e-bike, even though it's twice as heavy, actually kind of carries through heavy rock gardens a little better than a light mountain bike because you're not getting bounced around so much. And so it's like that weight creates some stability. I think the same thing can be said for adventure bikes. As long as you are carrying speed, that is the key. And it's one thing I've learned in mountain biking and I'm learning in adventure motorcycling as well, is like as long as the bike has momentum, it wants to stay upright. And so if you keep that momentum, a lot of times the bike will actually have a little bit more stability through some of the chunk. But mentally, it can be a little bit challenging because you kind of have to go fast, especially for me. But especially on the highway is another reason why I love big motorcycles. When I was learning to ride my bike, I think I talked about like getting on the highway out here because the speed limits are like 70 or 75. And then once you get into Utah, which I live about 30 miles from the Utah border, it is 80 miles an hour, which means everybody's going 85 or 90 miles an hour. And so those speeds, they were terrifying. Like I can still think about it. It was like so exhilarating just getting on the highway because it was like absolutely terrifying going 80 miles an hour on a motorcycle. But you adapt. And one thing that helps is the weight of the heavier bikes. They're so stable that when you get next to a semi or you get next to a big truck or a car comes up, that wind just doesn't blow you around as much. I remember when I got my Honda 450 RL and I wanted to take it on some single track up on the Grand Mesa. There was about 20 miles of road riding to get there, and I had to do some highway sections, and I can tell you it was like I had just gotten my license again because getting on the highway on that thing was just like absolutely terrifying. I was like pinning it at 75, and it was just like with those Dunlap D606s or whatever, it was like shimmying all over the place in the rain gutters, and it was like kind of a frightening experience. And I was getting blown all over the place. And so the big bike provides a lot of stability. And last but not least, a lot of the big bikes are going to have all the bells and whistles. So if you can only have one bike, you want to do some touring, you really can't beat the big bike because they're going to have, like speaking of the BMW R1300GS, it has an electric windshield, it has heated seats, heated grips, it's got like integrated pretty much everything. It's got a million different ride modes and it rides really, really well. And do you really ever need 150 to 170 horsepower on an adventure bike? Probably not, but it is really nice to have that power when you're kind of on the highway or on the road and you get in one of those situations where you're like, I might be in this person's blind spot, I need to get ahead to create some safety for myself. To have that extra power to kind of rip around is really, really helpful. Okay, before we get into the elephant in the room, if you haven't noticed, or if you haven't followed my channel at all, I have been working really hard to build a motorcycle apparel company. I am currently wearing our Zero Mile undershirt. This is a wool blend shirt. It is actually probably one of my favorite shirts, and I'm not just saying that because I made it. I love the fit. I love how soft it is. I love the stretch. I love the breathability. It is absolutely awesome. I am also wearing our denim. So this is our black in the boot pant, and I absolutely love them. I actually packed these pants on the New Mexico BDR, not to wear them on the motorcycle, but to actually wear them off. And that was the goal, to create apparel that you would want to wear on and off the motorcycle, but with enough slide protection to help protect you. Should you get yourself into a hairy situation, at least in the impact areas, you'll have some protection and hopefully help keep the skin on your body. So if you are interested in 0 Miles apparel, go to zeromileadv.com, download our free BDR checklist. I am currently updating the website, so you should be able to see some active product photos of the real stuff we are producing when it becomes available. If you are interested, for all of our very first customers, you'll become first edition members. This will get you some discount, lifetime discounts, some other cool free stuff I'm going to throw in there. Don't want to give it away, but your best opportunity to do that, because we have a limited run in our first run, is to get on that email list, so you'll be the first one to know when all of our stuff is live and it's ready for you to purchase if you're interested. So with that out of the way, let's talk about what changed my mind. On the New Mexico BDR, if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. One of the things about it, it is very, very loose. So that ride is like, it's like you're either riding in like an inch of gravel or you're riding in like an inch of sand for most of the BDR. A lot of it was very, very loose. The New Mexico Department of Transportation loves to just lay down heavy, heavy amounts of gravel on its dirt roads. What I have found is I'm not very good at riding in loose gravel. Now, I think a big bike can also do this, but a lighter bike at slower speeds is going to float a little bit quicker than a heavier bike. And what do I mean by float? Is that you need to get the bike up to enough speed to where the bike kind of wants to, like the front wheel kind of wants to just float through the gravel. So it's still gonna shimmy all over the place, but you'll find the bike kind of stables out, and it's still kind of scary to be honest with you, at least for me. Probably not for all of you who are really good, but if you're really good at riding motorcycles, I don't know why you're watching this channel, but you know, you kind of got to get enough speed. For me, I rode the New Mexico BDR on a KTM 890 Adventure R. I found at about 30 to 35 miles an hour was a speed where it was like the bike was stable enough to where it kind of wasn't just super shimmying because there wasn't enough momentum. So there's enough momentum to keep the bike going straight, and I wasn't going fast enough to where I feel like if I got in some really deep gravel, I would get in a situation that would hurt me. A good example, and I didn't get it on film, I love filming my foibles because just like I'm not trying to prove I'm the best ADV rider out there, and by God, I am absolutely not. I'm still new at this. I have a long ways to go. But as we were on one section, we got into some deep sand. We hit this one section that was probably maybe 200 yards long, and it was probably 8 to 10 inches deep of sand. And when I got in there, I hit it at about 35 miles an hour, and the bike started going all over the place. It was really deep at that point. And, you know, the bike slowed down. I was trying to get through it, but then basically I just set the bike down. So I didn't get hurt, right? Like I just laid the bike down, and then thank God for JP. I mentioned JP before, super awesome dude. He came, helped me lift the bike out of the sand. And then of course, because he's an ADV instructor, gave me kind of the tips to ride out of it, and I was able to ride out of it. But the best part was I was riding at a speed to where I got in a situation that was tough, that when I laid the bike down, I basically kind of just set it down. There was 0 injuries other than to my ego, but no injuries. And actually I was wearing 0 Mile apparel because I was testing it. So I was wearing our flannel and our double fronted work pants. Pants held up to the wreck, but again, I didn't really wreck hard. I've seen other videos of other guys that have been riding and they're going fast through a lot of this stuff, and they dump the bike and they end up with broken collarbones or broken legs or whatever. And I don't want to end up in that situation. So for me, it was nice to be on the lighter bike because I can go at those slower speeds. It is a little bit easier to manage in that really, really loose stuff. The next thing I think where weight actually plays in, you know, is the lighter weight is an advantage. On the BDR, and quick pro tip, if you're doing a BDR, for me, I think 150 miles is probably a good stretch. So if you're new to me and you want to do a BDR and you're going to kind of schedule it with friends and you're not just following along with a guide like I was, I would limit your days to about 150 miles per day. And why is that important when we're talking about big bikes? Because we had a couple days, we had actually a number of days where you're close to the 300 mile mark, 250 miles plus. And on one day, we actually had the hardest section of the Mexico BDR, which is Chloride Canyon. Now, quick note on Chloride Canyon. Chloride Canyon was a lot of fun, and I actually loved that section. So it wasn't the technicality of Chloride Canyon that made me want to be on a small bike. I actually had a lot of fun, and I would have ridden it on a big bike too, to be honest with you. And we had guys that did ride it on big bikes. But you know, we're riding the most technical section, and the thing is when you're riding these sections, you're going a lot slower, right? You're going 15 to 20 miles an hour through these tough technical sections, and you have to go 40 to 60 miles to get through these canyons. So it creates for a long day. And on that day in particular, we were doing over 300 miles, and we were on the bike from 7:45 a.m. till 8 p.m. at night. So we were out for 12 hours. Now, we weren't riding that entire time, but you're basically riding because you were out in the elements, in the sun and the heat and everything for a solid 12 hours. And so where I really appreciated the lighter bike is that even, you know, as we would stop just to like regroup or whatever, not having to pick up an extra 50 or 70 pounds off of that kickstand. It may seem stupid and it may seem kind of insignificant, but having a little less weight, even for those small things on those big days, was really, really helpful. And also going through Chloride Canyon, it was nice to have a smaller bike to be able to kind of like quickly maneuver under my legs and pick, you know, and rip through the chunk and actually kind of have fun and kind of feel like I was pushing the limits and riding better. Now on a big bike, like I just, like with this BMW that I'm riding right now, you know, I've taken it through some pretty chunky sections here locally, and probably more, maybe harder stuff than you'll see on most BDRs, depending upon what sections you're riding. Some of the challenge sections are very hard, but if you're just going to do a standard BDR and you're going to bypass a lot of standard sections, the stuff I'm riding out here in my backyard is probably harder than what you'll see on a PDR. And riding it through a lot of this loose chunk stuff, it handles it just fine. It gets through it no problem, but I definitely feel like I'm kind of picking my way through rather than just like rallying through, right? On the middleweight bike, I seem to find like, oh, what rock gardens can I ride through to have fun? Where on the big bike, I'm like, I'm gonna take the easier line and a little bit smoother because it's just more weight. I don't wanna damage it. I don't wanna pick it up. Where the middleweight, even though it's 50 to 75 pounds less, which may not seem like a lot, it just gives me a little bit more confidence. And that's kind of why I appreciated the middleweight bike on this BDR, is that when we got in the technical sections, I feel like I was picking the harder lines to have more fun on rather than trying to pick my way through and worried about like dropping and damaging such a big bike. And now while we're on the topic of dropping bikes, every BDR, like I'm some BDR expert. On the two BDRs that I have ridden, I have dropped my bike on every one. And on Colorado, I dropped it 4 times. New Mexico, I only dropped it 3 times. I think I got 2 of them on video, so I'll try to include them here if I can. But, you know, dropping a bike, picking it up, it is hard. Even picking up a middleweight, you know, especially if you've been out for a while and it's hot, like going through Chloride Canyon, the first drop I had, again, I just lost traction going up this steep hill. So again, it wasn't even like I wrecked hard. I was like climbing up, lost traction climbing up, and kind of went to the side of the hill trying to find traction, and then I just basically set the bike down. But I was already tired and hot because I was like ripping through this hard section and really having to work to move the bike through. And so again, having 50 to 75 pounds of less weight is way easier, right? Like go to the gym and load your barbell for deadlifts at, you know, say 135 pounds or whatever, and then add another 50 to 75 pounds on that and just see the difference, right? And now imagine having to do that 2 to 3 times throughout the ride, and then having to then, you know, that extra weight, and then on top of like being hot and tired already and still having to ride 200 miles. So I have dropped my bike on both BDRs. At this point, I don't really care about dropping the bike anymore, to be honest with you. Initially, I had like a fear of dropping the bike, but with the middleweight bike, honestly, I don't really care, I guess, because I'm not so worried about my ego anymore. Like, I don't really care. I'm new to this. I'm trying to learn. I want to have fun. If I end up dropping the bike in the process, whatever, as long as I don't break it and I don't hurt anybody else in the process, doesn't matter. Okay, so here's the deal. Am I now anti-big bike? The short answer is no. I still love big bikes. I'm actually having an amazing time riding this BMW R1250GS. Honestly, riding this bike, just a little bit I've been riding it, it is kind of like the big bike cheat code, I feel like. In a lot of ways, now that I'm used to how it feels and how the balance is, it almost feels as easy to ride as the Husky. I can't ride it as fast though, which is true. I still love big bikes. I think they're a lot of fun. I think if you want to go ride to a cool spot, if you want to go ride to your local Starbucks and have a cup of coffee, then a big bike is where it's at. It's just gonna be more comfortable on the highway. They are also like the ultimate touring machines. You know, like the KTM Super Adventure 1290 Super Adventure S, that is an amazing road bike. That thing is so fun. And I think if I put some dirt tires on mine and it was still awesome off-road. I actually almost bought another one of those bikes because actually thinking about what I would want to do with a big bike, I was like, honestly, the 1290 kind of suits what I would want to do. The S version, not the R. Having that smaller front wheel and like really ripping the corners. And honestly, the 19-inch front wheel, you know, like riding the BMW GS, it has a 19-inch front wheel. My Husky has a 21. Do I really notice a difference in rolling resistance? No, because I'm probably not good enough. If I was racing and I'm looking at tenths of a second, yes, that larger wheel is probably going to make a difference. And so I would just say what I have learned is just be honest with the type of riding that you're wanting to do. If you can only have one bike, again, if I could only have one motorcycle, I probably would still buy a big bike because I'm not riding BDRs all day, every day, right? I could pick my way through the smaller stuff and I could have fun. If you're the kind of guy, if you're the ADV guy that wants to be the biggest, baddest guy out there on the trail and you want to rip and you want to ride the most technical stuff, then you should probably get a middleweight bike because they are awesome. And that KTM 890 Adventure R, it is like a big dirt bike. It is awesome. Now for the type of riding I'm doing, as I, in my recent video, comparison video of the two bikes, now having spent a lot of time on the KTM, I want something with more touring comforts. And because most of my riding is fun dirt roads locally and to lunch and maybe even some canyon days and just all pavement days. And so for those situations, a big bike really suits me. So I would say in conclusion, I think that the middleweight bike is kind of the BDR slayer. I feel like they are perfect for BDRs. There's enough power so when you're doing the road sections, it's comfortable. If you're having to commute, because you're doing like a large BDRX, kind of like we did, because you're doing a different state, and so you're gonna have to have a stop point to load your truck and trailer or whatever, the middleweights are really awesome. They're just less weight to tow. There's plenty of power, 100 horsepower is plenty of power on the highway. They're going to have better off-road suspension. I think the middleweight bike is kind of the BDR slayer. So if your goal is to do BDRs and you can only have one bike, honestly, the middleweight is probably better. Or if you're like, you know what, I might do a BDR, maybe one, and I want to do a lot of other fun riding and do some other stuff, and I want to go to Starbucks, then you got to get the big bike. So with that, I have kind of changed my mind on big bikes. I still love them. I still think they're awesome. But I definitely think that there's a place, and I have a newfound appreciation for the middleweight adventure bike. So with that, if you've stuck around this long, make sure to subscribe if you're watching this. Don't tell any friends, because I'm trying to keep this small. If it gets too big, things get out of control. And we've actually been getting a lot of snarky comments lately, which means the channel is getting bigger. Because if you follow like any of the other channels that are bigger, and if you just read the comment section, the internet is a terrible place. And our comments have been so awesome. The community has been so great. Don't tell anybody, because I want to keep this a cool place. But if you are watching and do like it, subscribe so you can be part of the community and enjoy this. And if you want to leave your terrible comments below about how stupid this video was, we welcome those as well. And so with that, stay safe out there.